Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sidra Zahid, and I am Assistant Manager Early Childhood Intervention and Healthcare at the Karachi Down Syndrome Program. It is an incredible opportunity to be presenting here in front of all of you on this platform, a research paper that was developed in Pakistan by our organization. Before we begin, I will briefly take you through the agenda that we will be discussing today. So, as you all might know, that around 15% of the world's population has some form of disability. And that means that around 30 million people in Pakistan exist with some form of disability. Speaking of Down syndrome specifically, 1 in 700 individuals will have Down syndrome, according to the National Down Syndrome Society. Applying this across Pakistan means that there are around 300,000 individuals in Pakistan with Down syndrome. And this statistic is important for us to talk about how KDSP came about. So before KDSP in Pakistan, there was a scarcity of resources for individuals with Down syndrome, and there was no such organization or one-stop solution offering services for individuals with Down syndrome, them or their families. And so KDSP was founded by a group of parents and passionate individuals who wanted to bridge this gap in society and provide a one stop solution advocating for the value and acceptance of individuals with Down syndrome. And they built KDSP on the philosophy that they termed a kashti. And kashti is an Urdu word which in our language means boat. And each of the letters of Kashti actually stand for the departments that we have or the services that we provide individuals with Down syndrome. So the K in Kashti stands for Khandani Sahara, which is family support. And when a family first comes to us, we extend them that emotional, that social, and that financial support so that they can accept their child with Down syndrome before wider society can. The A in Kashti stands for awareness or agahi. And apart from advocating for individuals with Down syndrome, we also want wider society and the larger community to be aware and to help us support individuals with Down syndrome. The S stands for Sehat or healthcare. And we partner up with the leading hospitals in Karachi, which is where we're located. We've set up a specialized Down syndrome clinic that has a team of doctors who've focused on treating or caring for individuals with Down syndrome. We then have H for Hunar, which is enrichment and skills development. And aside from providing all the services, we also aim to equip individuals with Down syndrome with specific skills and vocational training that will allow them to be functional and self-fulfilling members of society where they can function independently. Then we have T for Talim, which is education and training. And we believe in providing individuals with Down syndrome opportunities for inclusive schooling. So we have multiple programs that run alongside so that individuals with Down syndrome can learn in an environment that is enriching for them and be at par with their typically developing peers. The stands for Ibtidai Bunyad, and that is early childhood intervention, which is the essence of our paper. And early childhood intervention provides the foundation for the development of individuals with Down syndrome. So we'll discuss this a little ahead. And so basically, Kashti embodies all the services that we provide because we believe ourselves to be like a vessel that helps carry our family through. And we accompany them along this journey that we take them. And so, just like the open sea, sometimes the waters might be rough, other times there will be calmer moments as well. But the important thing to note is that we and KDSP is there alongside our families throughout this journey. Okay. And so early childhood intervention also known as ECI, is a combination of three different types of therapies: physical, occupational, and speech therapy that we offer to children from the ages of 0 till 7. And that is where that early childhood part is crucial because the first 1,000 days of a child with Down syndrome's life are the most crucial in his development. That is the time when you can have the most effect and establish a good basis for their future learning and development. And so if you act when the time is right, you can make a drastic difference in the life that they lead later on. And so we have around over 350 therapy sessions scheduled weekly. We have a team of over 20 therapists that offer across each of these disciplines, and we accept people from all walks of life. So our services are open to anyone regardless of their background or standing. However, majority of our individuals are actually on financial assistance, and so that number is around 50 to 60%, and then increasing as well. Which means that the people who have received financial assistance from us, they receive further fee waivers from the already subsidized fee that we offer for our services, because we have that emphasis on how important early childhood intervention is for families, and we want them to realize that. So we offer them a lot of ease in that. Now, coming on to the paper specifically, I'd like to talk about the objectives of the research. And so the first objective that we had was to describe the interventions that continued in virtual space, and also talk about some of the new or evolved things that we came up with during the pandemic from our shift from, giving physical services to giving virtual services. The second objective that we had was describing the role of parents and how that transformed during the pandemic, because now parents had actually become the primary caregiver, the primary deliverers of therapy, and therapists were only accessible to them virtually. And that also sort of helped us adapt and design our therapies. And then the third part was to determine the effectiveness and the impact of virtual therapies that we were delivering, because of course we had to measure how it worked out for the development. So then going on to the first point is that KDSP was actually one of the first organizations to shift in the virtual space. So in the early days of the pandemic, before the major part of the city went into lockdown, KDSP actually went into lockdown, and we shifted all our services virtually because of how vulnerable individuals with Down syndrome are health-wise, and how careful we have to be with that. And so we decided to take that decision very early on, and that further helped us really adapt for our services for virtual space. And so we started immediately offering audio and video calls as teletherapy, and we offered them on our regular weekly scheduled basis. We also saw that while families were at home, they did not have access to the equipment and tools that we have at our organization, which means that they had to work towards converting things in their home to deliver therapy. And so we saw things like PVC pipes being used for parallel bars that would help children walk. We also had colored tapes or colorful paper being laid across the floor and marked to allow children guided way for helping them learn how to walk. Then some parents even took certain inspiration from us, and we shared details with them as well as measurements for some equipment such as tables and chairs built for the children. And some parents went so far as to actually making their own versions of these things. And then we also had to emphasize on therapy capacity building because there is already, a constraint on the amount of expert and trained individuals to divulge these therapies and actually, give therapies to these children. So because we shifted virtually, this allowed us to expand our capacity. And as well as in forms of therapists as well, and in terms of the amount of families that we registered as well, because now virtually we were available very easily to anyone. And so we saw a lot of our people out of Karachi, out of our city, and across Pakistan registering with us. Also, because we understood that during the pandemic, a lot of people faced financial issues. The families were being laid off of work. A lot of industries suffered. So KDSP offered additional fee waivers in addition to the financial aid that we already had. And for a certain time, the fee for therapy was actually completely waived off. And then later on, this was also extended discretionally to some parents and some families who couldn't afford it at all. We also had personalized check-in calls where therapists were keeping constant checks on parents and the child that was assigned to them, because now obviously they had that barrier where they were only accessible online. At KTSP, we created designated WhatsApp groups and groups to offer constant communication so that we could stay in touch all the time in case a parent needed support from their therapist. And because the therapists had a more instructional role right now, and the parents were the ones delivering the therapy. So, and another intervention that we also had was that we started offering consultations to ages 8 and above beyond our limited range. And we offered them again one-time consultations, which were consultations specific to them, because in the pandemic, when initially we had the stressful situation, a lot of the parents said that their children who had now grown up and were now adults were actually facing a regression in their development. And so we also had to address that. And so the way our services expanded did take a little bit of a toll on our therapists as well as the parents, because our therapists were the one who were actively putting in that, energy and constantly in communication with the parent and with the child. However, it wasn't without its rewarding bits, and it was a fulfilling experience for a lot of people as well. And we had to be very careful about keeping a check on the emotional well-being of our team members as well. So in relation to that, I'm going to narrate a case study that one of our occupational therapists, Ms. Maha Khan, wrote about. And so I'm going to read a little part of it to you to give you a context as to what happened. My client, Mustafa Kashif, is 2 years old and has shown progress while taking the teletherapy. It was challenging at first to find the best way to engage with him and his mother. We started off with video calls, but saw that Mustafa was easily distracted and it did not help his goals. Soon we shifted to audio calls for the mother to learn and apply techniques with Mustafa. We started alternating with audio and visual features and divided time in 3 equal parts as the most customized plan for Mustafa. The first 10 minutes were when the mother was on audio calls and we shared the plan and activities. The next 20 to 30 minutes were spent on video call with the camera facing the mother as she carried out and demonstrated the therapy with Mustafa. And I, as the therapist, observed and passed additional instructions without distraction so that she could be aided. The last 5 minutes were also extremely important because that was the time when I offered her full feedback as part of my interventions, plus address any questions that did arise for her. This proved to be an effective strategy, and soon we were able to see a marked progress in Mustafa. We also started using household items such as cardboard, utensil supplies, toys, and colorful items to create fun activities for Mustafa. I shared pictures and videos for the mothers as reference for her to work on Mustafa's fine motor skills. We started witnessing progress in Mustafa's sitting tolerance. It increased from 1 minute when he was here for physical therapy to 20 to 25 minutes at a stretch now. We also had the opportunity to work on toilet training, which wasn't possible earlier when the mother brought Mustafa to KTSP. With the sessions practically happening as if they were with him in their own home, we found the opportunity to work on previously missing things, such as the mother's newfound sense of responsibility in following home plans properly, now knowing how to deliver them as opposed to silently witnessing me deliver them pre-pandemic time. Mustafa's mom can literally witness the results of her hard work play off, and she keeps sending me pictures and videos of his progress. She is always wanting to learn more, apply more, and do more. We are so proud. Indeed, she is too. And we have so many of these experiences related to us by each of our therapists. And it really shows how deeply they're involved with the children. And although they're physically distanced, during this time, we still remained connected and tied close together. And so now we will look at some of the things that were actually used and some of the innovations and how the parents applied their creativity in the absence of having therapy tools and equipment in their home. And so we actually had a set of lacing beads made here from shoelace and bottle caps with holes made in them. We had a pegboard made by a parent out of a shoebox with holes poked in, as well as earbuds for pegs. Now we will talk a little bit about how the data was collected. And so we had internal monitoring tools and reports that we have separately for each of our therapy disciplines to monitor the child's progress as well. And we had all of our systems digitalized during this time so everyone could access them easily. We also had the opportunity for one-to-one feedback from therapists and therapy heads to the specific families, and there were dedicated times for these. And then we also did a telephonic survey with 100 parents to see the impact of virtual therapy and how it was impacting their children based on their opinions and the observations they were making as primary interactors with the children. And here are some of our findings with it. So we actually saw that parental involvement increased because now parents were at the forefront delivering these therapies, and they were the ones directly communicating with the children and interacting with the children in the capacity of a therapist. So we saw parents be transformed into some form of miniature therapists for their children. We also saw how creative and how dedicated these parents were, right? And we saw an increase in parent-child attachment. And so I'm sure that you guys are all aware about the 5 languages of love that exist. But one of the languages of love is called physical touch. And now that the parent and child were actually, the parent was conducting the therapy, they were able to interact better with the child, they were able to bond, and that increased parent-child attachment. And it has been seen that the better parent-child bond is, the more fulfilling experience it would be for a child, and that is why we saw, how they also progressed in therapies. Another improvement we saw was how our reach increased beyond the city of Karachi, because now we were more accessible, and so we saw an increase in out-of-city enrollment. And so we actually had a 26% increase in enrollments out of city. In comparison to this, we also saw a 28% drop in weekly cancellations because of the increase in accessibility that was there. 42% of the parents from our survey reported that teletherapy was beneficial for their child's developmental progress, as well as 55% of parents reporting feeling more empowered and trained to practice therapy with their child at home independently. And so we can really see the impact that these therapies made, virtual therapies made during the pandemic. And simultaneously, we also had some challenges. And so the first challenges during this time was navigating through the new space, navigating virtually, because there were people who had connectivity issues. There were people who did not have access to this sophisticated technology. There were people living in remote areas where they did not have workable internet connections, and they lacked even these resources. And so that is why we also alternated between leaving video calls and audio calls and just voice recordings as well to ensure that we were doing the best from our bit. And we also saw that some parents were under-resourced for therapy at home because obviously delivering therapy requires a certain level of skill set and a certain level of understanding and capacity. So to deliver these instructions to children and see them being carried out. And so we saw that some parents struggled a little bit with that. And the last challenge that we faced was a stretching of internal capacity because now, because of the virtual space and that constant connection, therapists were being approached by parents at all times and also beyond working hours. And so it was a tiring time for therapists as well on their energy. And at the same time, it was tiring for the parents as well because now they had to provide that service for their child. And so it was extremely crucial for us to balance the well-being of our therapists along with the well-being of the parents in our community. And in conclusion, while referring to that, I'd like to talk about how the departments at KDSP are all tied so closely together and they offer that support to each other. And so when we saw this, when we saw this strain in energy, we actually amped up our family support and we started offering training for our therapists. We brought more therapists on board, as well as conducting more emotional support and well-being workshops for the parents in our communities. We also devised more programs and created a parent peer support program where certain parents were trained in counseling and therapy techniques by professionals, and their experiences helped them relate and cater to and guide more parents, because we also had that influx of new families who registered with us. And so our old and experienced parents were able to cater to these new ones. And in this way, we were able to combat some of the toll that this pandemic took on everyone's mental health. And before wrapping up, I'd just like to talk about this sense of community and how strong we saw it was in the Pakistani people, and how great it is to see the community contributing and coming as supporters or as advocates for inclusion or for Down syndrome, and providing for these vulnerable groups the support that they require. We here believe that nobody is left behind. And at KDSP, everybody deserves a shot at living their best life. And we have discovered that through our community that support us, we were able to provide these things and such opportunities and services for individuals with Down syndrome, even through an entire global pandemic. Um, and by this time, although we were the first to shift virtually, after almost 2 years, we have been among the slowest and most cautious to shift back to full on site services. And it has been an immense source of happiness to see our families and our children return to early childhood intervention therapies and return to KDSP and their familiar spaces and interact with their therapists. And we also want to hear from you in terms of how your experiences were, and if you can relate to some of the struggles or some of the things that we had, and perhaps how you could support us at KDSP, even in spirit, through sharing your small stories and experiences and how you identify with us and in this pandemic. We would love to hear back from you through your comments, through supporting us, feedback, and our details are mentioned right here. So you can definitely reach out to us and we will be available for you.